Now to move to the next key process here we have is controlling the resource. I'm going to cover controlling the resources and also controlling the procurement as the last two key processes involved when monitoring and controlling the project. To control the resources. So control resources is a crucial process in the project management. It aligns the resources activities with the project objectives. It also monitors the vendor performance and ensures the compliance with the procurement management plan. And the key control resources, and outputs here we have. The inputs are well known to us. Project management plan, including the resource management plan, if you recall, which we have developed. The project documents, work performance data, agreements, OPAs, in case if there is any assets, are being considered as part of these resources. Tools and techniques here we have is data analysis, problem solving, interpersonal and team skills, project management information system to track the utilization of these resources. The outputs here would be, let's say, work performance information and change requests, project management plan updates, or project document updates. So again, um, controlling resources is a very simple, let's say, process to talk about. It's like how to correctly manage the physical resources of the project as per the project is progressing. So think of when you have an activity or you have, say, a milestones where you have to install, for example, certain network hardwares within a certain location. So now it's the time to ensure that you are utilizing and you are, let's say, installing these hardwares as per the plan, monitoring in case if there is any discrepancies, in case if there is any needs to assign more control or to control or to assign extra resources to that activity. And by the way, this process does not look at the let's say human resources or HR resources. So this thing this works heavily on the let's say in the assets or in the resources of the physical resources, not the human resources. The human resources we already have covered the previous processes when we talked about managing the team and controlling the team. So again, controlling the resources, it focuses on the physical resources, not the human resource. So you as a project manager, you will have to have, let's say, a plan, and you need to ensure that the physical resources are being used correctly and efficiently to ensure that you are controlling all of these resources as per the plan and to avoid any waste of these resources. When it comes to the procurement is more of monitoring and controlling the let's say, the activity that ensures all of the procurement related work follows the contract agreements, also the project requirements. And this process, it helps the project managers to identify the risks early and track the vendor performance and ensures the compliance with the contractual obligations. The key ITTOs here we have is the project management plan, where we have a procurement plan, the project documents, agreements, procurement documentation, where you have, let's say, established between you and the vendors when you have executed and you have selected, let's say, the bidder or let's say the contractor, you have selected a contractor. There will be a procurement or let's say an agreement between you and vendors or suppliers. So these are considered as agreement. The procurement documentation is where you have procured, where you float an RFP, you wrote all of your requirements, and you get all of these responses, evaluated all of these responses. So this could be one of these important inputs that you have to deal with to ensure that whatever you have asked for is aligned with whatever the supplier is working on. The approved change request, if any, work performance data, the EFFs, the OPAs, tools and techniques. Here we have the expert judgment, claims administration, which is a new concept which we are going to cover, data analysis, inspection and audits. We already have covered these, inspection and audits. but we are gonna explain it in terms of procurement, how to inspect and how to audit these procurement processes. The output here you have is the closed procurement where let's say you have received all of these equipments or deliverables from the vendors or suppliers. Now it's the time to confirm that all of the vendor or all of the supplier work has been completed successfully. Now you need to close it. Work performance information, procurement documentation updates if needed, change request, and other project management plan. And to start also talking about managing the vendor performance. So vendor performance monitoring ensures that the procured goods and services aligns with the project expectations. And by setting a clear KPIs and conducting regular reviews, the project manager can address issues before they impact the project success. A structured approach, such as using performance scorecard, helps in tracking the vendor adherence to the agreed upon standards. And to take an idea about these, let's say, key performance indicators, it could include like the delivery time or on-time delivery. And the description of that KPI is like percentage of deliverables were received on time. For example, you were supposed to receive, for example, 10 delivery in a month. Maybe you have received only 9. So the let's say the percentage here or the KPI here could be 90% only because the vendor has missed one time out of the 10 times. So also we have the cost adherence or the cost compliance. And cost compliance is like ensuring it's used a KPI to ensure that all of the expenses aligns with the contractual terms. We also have this quality benchmark or the quality compliance. And quality compliance, it's like measuring the quality of these deliverables agreed quality standards. But for example, if you are running a software or you're running an AI model with one of these suppliers, so how you will measure the quality compliance? Remember that when you set your quality requirements at the beginning of the project, for example, let's say that you have asked the vendor to implement a 95% accuracy model, for example, in healthcare heart prediction model, for example. So now it's the time to measure whether the client or the supplier or the vendor is meeting this 95%. It's a very important concept to keep measuring these KPI against the agreed quality standards to ensure that you and the supplier are delivering results are valuable to the stakeholders. When it comes to ensure the contract compliance or the contract compliance, so contracts outlines the vendor obligations, but continuous monitoring also is essential to enforce the compliance. By conducting a regular audits to validate the adherence to these, let's say, compliance, and by having a transparent, let's say, payment tracking or performance tracking tools for real-time vendor updates, ongoing communication, it helps to mitigate the risks and maintain the vendor accountability. Ensuring a legal and regulatory adherence is critical to avoid any dispute and project delays. And some of these contract compliance you might face when there is a scope adherence. So you need to ensure that the vendor or the supplier is adhering to the scope that you have agreed with. And the scope here, it includes the compliance with the deliverables, which match the contract specifications. Also, you have financial compliance when your payments are made as per the agreed terms. Legal and regulatory compliance by ensuring that the vendors adhere to the laws and industry standards that you have set at your quality and legal requirements or compliance. Also, performance requirements by measuring through the SLAs and KPIs. So, these are the key aspects when talking about contract compliance. Already, we have talked about these methods to ensure the compliance with these, let's say, contracts. by having a regular audits and performing tracking tools or performance tracking tools. Also, clear communication with the vendor to align with the expectation. Let's take an example here where is an IT outsourcing contract. The performance clauses ensures that the vendor maintains 99.9 uptime for the cloud services. And in case if the cloud services or your services as a client, it goes less than this, let's say, thresholds, you have the right to, let's say, to ensure that the uh, vendor follows this 99.9%. If not, then there will be, let's say, legal consequences or legal penalties that should be applied against the, let's say, the supplier or the vendor. How to handle the procurement issues and disputes. So, common procurement issues, including these late deliveries, which always disrupt the project timelines, also quality deficiencies, which results in rework and cost overruns, also increasing the project timelines in case if there's any rework. You might also face some of these procurement issues, including the scope discrepancies, and that means the deliverables does not meet the contract specifications. Sometimes you might also face this payment dispute when there is a delay in the vendor compensation that could impact you as the, say, the project manager, the stakeholders, also the vendor. So payment dispute, it delays and the vendor compensation, which impact the relationships. But how to, let's say, to solve such of these procurement issues? First, you need to be a good negotiator. Negotiation by having a direct message discussions or messages with the vendor to resolve these conflicts and avoid escalating it. Also have one of these resolution techniques which is called alternative dispute resolution. It's like meditation or a preparation of the legal disagreements. Sometimes you need to apply for a change request or change orders, which is like official contract modification if needed to meet you to meet your needs and to meet already also the vendors or supplier needs. Again, procurement issues can be avoided sometimes, but they must be handled proactively. So with a clear communication and adherence to contract terms and conditions, also effective dispute resolution strategies prevent minor issues from escalating into major project risks. If necessary, maybe you need to have a formal change requests which can be made by change request or contract amendments. What is the risk involved in procurement? So now let's talk about risk management and procurement control. Procurement risks you might face when you are running a project and you are dealing with a procurement or say an external vendor relationships. First, you need to consider the supplier reliability risks. And that means vendor is or the vendor fails to meet expectation. Next, you have the market risks. And market risks is like the price fluctuations that impact the procurement costs or cost of the delivery of the service or software or whatever project that you're working on. You also have this compliance risks where the vendor fails to meet legal or regulatory requirements. What else we have as part of the procurement that we can list? We have the logistical risks, which is a logistics risk, let's say. It means delay due the transportation or supply chain disruptions. Maybe you are dealing with a vendor who you have requested to your devices from an external countries or external resources. So and you have a tight deadline. So these delays in terms of, let's say, logistics issues, transportation supply, or chain disruption, it could be considered one of these important risks that you need to counter for. But how to, let's say, mitigate these risks? Let's now talk about these risk mitigation strategies to the mentioned risks that just mentioned. First, you need to have vendor contingency plan. Vendor contingency plan, it's like a backup suppliers for critical goods or services. Do not put all of your eggs in one basket. In case if there are some alternative suppliers who you can deal with that delivers the same, let's say, goods or services, you need to work with or to put them as contingency plan to reduce the impact in case of your original the supplier or vendor has no control over certain challenges. So now you have a backup suppliers for these critical services or goods. Also, the one of these important risk mitigation strategies by choosing the right type of contract, and by saying that we talked about this and understanding the types of contracts. You recall when we talked about fixed price contract and fixed price contract, it reduces the financial uncertainty and put all of the risk on the vendor or the supplier side. Also, one of these mitigation strategies to